I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, I'm delighted to welcome back one of my favorite guests, one of my favorite writers. He's an all-around good guy and a terrific, prolific writer. And today we're exploring a haunting story that he's just released. It's a story where romance and darkness collide. We're talking to Carlo Armenise, and the name of his book is Evil Eyes, a story of love, hate, and witchcraft. The story follows Andrew Weiler, a man with a thriving career. He's a top-notch professional photographer. He's got close friends, but he's still a lonely guy. But his search for love leads him to both the woman of his dreams and his nightmares in this chilling tale of passion, betrayal, and the supernatural. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Authors Tranquility Press for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing books. The links are below this interview. Carlo, thank you so much for joining me once again here today.
It's my pleasure. It's always my pleasure to join you. Um, so I appreciate it. And I also appreciate the fact that, you give me the visibility that I need for these stories because, I've come to realize that what I am in addition to being a writer is a storyteller.
Hmm.
And I'm always looking for that story that really draws people in and says something. Horror is a strange medium because so much of horror that's out there really just is a lot of just that. It's a lot of cutting people up and
Yeah.
burning people down and trying to get rid of the bad guy. And when I look at horror, I want it to have a message to it.
Hmm.
Like with Evil Eyes.
Hmm.
The idea with Evil Eyes was to sit back and say, okay, here's what you want. You want a relationship. You're lonely. And now this guy is exposed to all kinds of beautiful women his whole career because he's a photographer. And
Hmm.
yet he's never really found a woman that he can really, really say he's in love with until he meets the heroine of Evil Eyes.
Hmm.
And so what ends up happening is you get into a situation because I believe that happens to a lot of people in life. The thing is be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people really want something so bad that all of a sudden when they get it, they had no idea what it is that they wanted. And that's what happened to Andrew. He gets this woman who's a model. And as it turns out, there's a whole backstory with
Hmm.
her and what she's trying to do. And it's horror. I mean, because I wanted it to be horrible.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of that kind of imagery in the book, but it's also a relationship book. And it's also a mystery that he never really solves until the end. And even at the end, you weren't sure that he really solved it.
Hmm.
So that's kind of my motivation for Evil Eyes.
Yeah. Well, it's a great book. I really think it's one of my favorites. It's like choosing among children to pick my favorite. But I told you before we started, I traveled all through Europe this fall, and I was reading your books nonstop, and I truly enjoyed Evil Eyes. It felt very cinematic to me. And I thought even the cover was gripping. I mean, you look at the girl on the cover, you're like, I could fall for her, even though she looks evil, you
That's
know?
true.
And
That's
that's
true.
Andrew's problem is he ignores the obvious. I mean, terrible things are happening around Isabella
That's right.
right from the start,
Right
right
from
with
the
his
start.
fiance, and he chooses to ignore it. And I guess that's part of your message is that we are blind when it comes to love.
Well, and I think that, you want to think you can change it.
Mhm.
If there's an issue, you can deal with it and you can make it better. And with Isabella, because he didn't understand what her backstory was and how he actually really was involved until later,
Mhm.
when he finds out that, it goes back to his father
Mhm.
and and she was looking for revenge for something his father did, which he didn't know really anything about. Isn't that the way it works a lot of times as you get
Yeah.
into a situation where if somebody did something in your past that you don't remember or know about, but it comes back to haunt you when it's
Right.
all said and done? And that was also the side of it where he needed more evidence before he was able to sit back and say, wow, this
Mhm.
girl has got a problem. And it starts out right from the beginning where he loses his fiance.
Mhm.
Uh, she ends up being killed by Isabella. because she's got this plot, this motive, this revenge, and she needs to be in his life in order for her to carry it out. So I try to relate it to a lot of what goes on in life in general.
Mm.
It's you always have to be careful, even though
Yeah,
you don't want to, because it looks so good.
yeah,
Why do you want to even take the risk of losing it? But then you realize that it really wasn't that good.
exactly.
And it could cost you your life, which it almost does for him.
Exactly. And Lucifer was God's most beautiful angel. I mean, you have
Yes,
to realize that the devil can come in many, many forms, can come with blue eyes and blue jeans, can come with dark hair and dark eyes and a captivating way about her.
right.
And I really like the fact that you also immerse us in the high-end modeling world. I thought that made it very fun. And that's the takeaway, I think, from most of your novels is that there's really a sense of fun there. I mean,
Yes.
this is scary, bad things are happening, people are dying, but there's also a sense of fun. That must be one of your goals, right?
Well, it is because I want that's life.
Yeah.
I mean, there's tragedy and there's comedy. I mean,
Mm.
that's what life is all about.
Yeah.
And you have to interject both to make the characters more alive and real. And I think for me, starting with Sam Razor,
Right.
that the idea was is that to be a detective, come on, that's normal, a lot of detectives, but to have a little bit of humor in the character so that it establishes the character with reality that you want to continue to read about.
Mm.
And with Evil Eyes, it was the same thing. He has a best friend. His best friend is the agent, the modeling agent,
Hmm.
and their relationship is kind of comical,
Yeah.
because the best friend has got one of those senses of humor. But as
Yeah.
it turns out, the best friend ends up losing his life
Yeah.
because she doesn't want anybody in the mix or in the way from her to get into his life and to do the things she needs to do. You've got an uncle that is trying to put her in a situation where she sees what she's doing and to
Hmm.
clarify it and make her stop. But she's not going to stop. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just the bottom line. And then in this particular story, I put in a dog
Yeah.
because she has an accomplice, but it's her dog, her pet, which turns out to be, for the most part, an accomplice. I mean, the
Mhm.
dog is there to help her and to do the things that she wants to get done. So it's kind of intermingles with a lot of different character types and situations. But what I hope is that people read it and they
Mhm.
walk back and say, wow, I'd really like to see this.
Yeah.
Or it's real visual and I can see it happening. But at the same time, it doesn't lose its energy,
Right.
because like I said, horror sometimes it just turns out to be a lot of horror.
Right.
And it loses the energy of the inside story, the intimate side of the story.
And this is horror slash fantasy in a way. Like you
Yes.
said, so much horror that we equate with horror nowadays are basically slasher. This isn't slasher. This is
No.
more intellectual. This is more subtle. And it's great. The book felt like a treatment for a movie, a treatment for a film. And I could easily see that being translated into a screenplay. I mean, the length of the novel is perfect for a screenplay. So tell us your thoughts there about this becoming a film.
Well, that's what what I try to write when I'm writing is, Footsteps in the Dark, Sam Razor, Evil Eyes, Deceitful Intentions. What I'm trying to write is a great story, but that it has the ability to transcend the book and
Mm.
become something more visual.
Yeah.
And so with Evil Eyes, we're trying to market Evil Eyes
Mhm.
for the film business. And I think one of the challenges is you run into is you got to have the ability to get it in to the
Mm.
studios.
Right.
That's always the challenge with writers is that you want it to be a movie, but every film studio out there has all kinds of restrictions before
Yeah.
they'll even look at it. And
Right.
then it's a very confined industry to some degree. They only use the people they know and they don't want to use it. So
Yeah.
we'll see, but we're out there, we're marketing it, we're trying to get it out there because I believe like you did. I mean, I believe when I reread it, I'm saying, "Oh God, this is a Netflix. Come on.
Yeah.
You got to
It
put this
totally feels like a Netflix film.
you got
It's
to
got
put this
great
out."
looking people. It's got cool settings. It's got action. It's got Black Beach, which is haunting. It's got all of the makings of a great Netflix film, or any film, actually. But
Right.
Netflix has become the way that we consume films nowadays, so it feels like a Netflix film.
And that was kind of the thought process around it. But I first started out, I wanted it to be a good story. Because you know that
Exactly.
you get into a situation where they're genre specific readers. There's specific readers out there that just want horror. And
Mhm.
I think that if you write something like that, then your audience shrinks
Right.
because there's a finite amount of people that want horror.
Yeah.
But so when I write it, I want it to be horror specific to some degree, but also a great story that appeals to a lot of people. Um, and I like to go back and forth between women and men leading characters. This one happens to have both because it
Hmm.
has the woman and the photographer.
Hmm.
And I wanted to make sense. When I go to a movie, sometimes I walk out going, that didn't make any sense. What the hell
Right.
was that about? The
Right.
story didn't make sense. The plot doesn't make sense. I wanted this to make sense because you
Right.
don't know which of your friends are out there studying witchcraft, and what they're sticking needles in that have your
Yeah.
name on them, that
Yeah.
kind of a thing. So I wanted it to make sense. Uh, it's a quick read
Hmm.
because I didn't really want, I mean, I could have gone on and on and on and on, but the fact of the matter is I wanted to kind of have a quick read, keep your interest. Doesn't take more than probably 2 or 3 hours to read the book,
Right.
and then walk away saying, boy, I'd like to see the sequel, which is the reason why I ended the story the way I did.
Yeah.
It's just when you think she's gone,
Maybe she's
she's
not.
not.
Exactly, exactly. She could be the next girl at the bar with the
That's right.
beautiful dark eyes. You
That's
never
right.
know. Um, yeah, you did a terrific job on this. Have you thought about casting at all? I mean, nowadays I don't know who any of the actors are anymore because there's so many actors out there. If you're not Brad Pitt, Jennifer Lawrence, or two or three others, I don't know you anymore. So, have you thought about casting?
Well, no, because I think at the end of the day, there's so many young new actors, and everything's budgetary, for the film
Right.
business. I mean, if they go out, you want Brad Pitt? Okay, Brad Pitt's going to take up 60% of the film budget.
Yeah.
And does it really need
It
Brad Pitt?
doesn't. It doesn't.
You just
Andrew
get
can be anybody.
a
And I
good
think,
actor and
yeah,
actress, right? And then you get into a situation where then you don't have to deal with the budgetary challenges you're going to run into. So no, I
exactly.
haven't really thought about it. I spent more time thinking about the character for Sam Razor than I did for either of the characters here because, again, I wanted Sam Razor to be a perpetual character. I mean, it goes from case to case to case. So, but no, I didn't really. Did you think about it when you were reading?
You know what? Like I said, I don't know any of the young actors that would fall into that age group nowadays. You know what I mean? So I think the undiscovered, unknown
Yeah.
actors would be great and it would work. Sam Razor is another book I reread, the case of the blonde with the bad nose job, his first case. And, it got me actually to take a look at Sam Spade again. And I watched the original Sam Spade movie from 1931, starring Ricardo Cortez, whom you probably never even heard of, and I never
No,
knew
I
it
never did.
existed until recently. But before Bogart played Sam Spade, this guy Ricardo Cortez did, and it's a pretty cool film. It's on Prime. I would suggest you watch it since you're a fan of noir. I'm a huge fan of noir, and I love the inner thinkings of Sam Razor, which is what makes it so fun to read. His observations are the kind of observations that you and I might make, that
Right.
this guy looks like he was born under a weight bench at Planet Fitness. I mean, that's a great line and very, very true. Nowadays, everybody's a chiseled Adonis today. Do you notice that?
Yeah, well, or trying to be. I mean, that's kind of the whole deal. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think those kinds of things with Sam Razor, that's what I wanted. I
Yeah.
wanted you to get into the head of the guy too at the same time that what he was thinking when he meets the woman at the beginning. It's
Right.
almost like he's captivated by her because she's so beautiful. But then that's when she has a black eye. And she
Mhm.
says, "Well, what happened to your eye?" "Oh, I got in a fight with an angry racquetball." But the reality is, then he says, "I don't know why I said racquetball. I don't even know what a racquetball is." But
Right.
he said she's in such good shape. I don't want her to think that I'm not in good shape, even though I am, that kind of a thing.
Right.
Or when he sees the guy with his shirt off and says, "Well, now that I see him with his shirt off, it reminds me of me. Well, at least his eyelids do." That kind of a thing. Where
Exactly.
that's what I love about writing Sam Razor, because that
Mm.
gets that comedic side of me motivated. And it
Yeah.
still works because you got to have a good case. And I think Blonde with the Bad Nose Job has gotten a lot of attention from because of the case itself.
Hmm.
And that's another one that I'm trying to promote to become a film and then a consistent story ongoing. So we'll see, because I wrote the second one too.
Hmm.
The case is, so but Evil Eyes was a little different because, again, I wanted to stick to the genre of the horror side,
Yeah.
and also because it scares the hell out of me when I wrote it, because
Yeah.
you never know. Is there
Yeah.
somebody out there that's got your name on something you did, something your relatives did, something back years and years ago that you don't know anything about? So,
Yeah. It absolutely is frightening. You do horror well. Um, the first story in Footsteps in the Dark is
Conversation with Death.
really, really riveting for a couple of reasons. Uh, First and foremost, I think people are fascinated by serial killers.
Yes.
I also think people are fascinated by that era of the diner and so forth that you kind of
Yeah.
also put in there.
Yeah.
And they're also curious about life after death. And you blend all three of those things in that one story so nicely that it's very, very scary. It's very, very dark, but it's also filled with hope at the end. And that's what I like about that story. Tell the folks at home a little bit about that story.
Well, the conversation with death is the first story in Footsteps in the Dark. And the idea was that this guy, the lead, essentially his wife is killed. And it wasn't his wife died, I should say. They were relatively newlyweds,
Mhm.
and his wife dies, but it wasn't a normal death. It wasn't like she had a heart attack or she was murdered by her serial killer. And so he was determined he was going to find this guy and do to him what he did to his wife.
Mhm.
So he joins the search. Now, as it turns out, this serial killer's been all over the United States killing people, and he's being followed by an FBI agent. They're trying to bring this guy to justice. And the challenge they run into is that this is a horrible serial killer, because what he does, the manifestation of his particular horror, is he cuts people up.
Mhm.
And he takes their body parts and strews them all over the place. So it's kind of, that's where the horror side of it comes in. And
Mhm.
so what happens is he joins up with this FBI agent, and he starts tracking this killer across the United States. And he's so distraught by the fact that he lost his wife, that every murder he encounters, especially if it's a woman, reminds him of his wife again. So he's so determined that he's going to catch this guy. He's leaving a crime scene, and as he's driving past back to his hotel, his car engine stops.
Mhm.
Now, he didn't have it, there's no reason for it to stop. It just
Right.
stops. So he gets out, his cell phone doesn't work all of a sudden. He gets out and he's looking for a place where he can get to a phone. And he looks over and he finds this diner. And so he says, okay, well, they must have a phone there. So he goes to the diner. And when he's in the diner, what ends up happening is he starts to be confronted by the dead people that the serial killer has killed.
Mhm.
And he starts having a conversation with these people, but he doesn't understand it because, if you went to a diner and all of a sudden you're sitting in front of dead people, you wouldn't believe it. You said,
Mhm.
it must be crazy. This not. So throughout the story, he keeps being interacted with dead people who are ultimately trying to tell him how to get to the killer, which is
Mhm.
essentially what ends up happening in the story. These people continue to give him clues as to where the killer is. And he finally, at the end of the story, which I always love the ending of Conversation with Death, he ends up catching the killer. And the scene essentially is he's sitting in his car, and he's looking, he just confronted the killer in an apartment building. He goes
Mhm.
back out to his car. He's sitting in the driver's seat. He looks over to the left and he sees the killer standing right next to him. And so the killer's got his knife in his hand, and he's going to come through and he's going to stab him. So he opens the door real fast and knock the guy away and drives off. And when he
Mm,
drives off, all of a sudden he sees the diner again.
mm,
Now, he's wondering what diner? I already went through all this. He goes to the diner, and in the diner this time is the private investigator, the FBI guy sitting there.
mhm.
And when he walks in, he basically says, "Well, what are you doing here?" He said, "Well, we know where the guy is." And he said, "Well, never mind. I got that guy. And how did you get him?" "Well, because I'm dead." So
Mm.
what ends up at the end of the story is he was then killed he becomes the dead guy communicating with the FBI agent.
Yeah,
And so that's what I love. I love to work on the endings.
yeah.
All my stories, I hope, have those kind of surprise endings. Uh, the book I'm writing right now is another group of short stories that I'm entitling Footsteps in the Light, as
Hmm.
opposed to Footsteps in the Dark, because these are more hopeful kinds
Yeah,
of footsteps.
right.
And they all have that ending that you just don't see coming. So,
Yeah.
and Conversation with Death was always one of my favorites
Yeah,
because
it's great. And it's funny that you call that Footsteps in the Light because I said this book actually is Footsteps in the Light at the end as well.
yeah,
Because
yes,
despite all he's been through, there is a grouping of pictures on the wall of that diner of
yes,
people in happier times. And eventually he sees himself and his wife who was killed
that's right.
in those pictures. And I
That's
thought
right.
that was really, really touching and kind of gives it a happy ending. Well, at least they're together because he was so distraught. And you make that very, very clear that he was so distraught over the loss of his wife. So
Yes.
that one alone, it's very Twilight Zone-esque, particularly with the diner appearing, the people, the victims coming to meet him in the diner, him himself later coming into the diner himself as a victim, uh, just really reminded me of Twilight Zone, which I guess in our era is Black Mirror. So
Yeah.
again, I think you're set up here for another great cinematic tale. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, Footsteps is being looked at as a film.
Hmm.
In fact, what ended up happening, I had the screenplay written for Footsteps in the Dark, which entails all 8 of the short stories, and and it's really well done. So that's being looked at. But I always wanted to sit back and do something more specific for Conversation with Death, because I
Hmm.
think that's the kind of movie that really would capture people's attentions.
Yeah.
Like I said, because it's got all the features and benefits that you'd get from a good story. So, but Footsteps as a group is being looked at. And That's why when I wrote it was either going to be Footsteps in the Dark 2
Hmm.
or more Footsteps in the Dark. But then I
Right.
decided, I wanted this group of stories to be a little bit more positive,
Right.
if you will, little bit of religion thrown in, a little bit of other things that people are desperate for these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we all need a little light at the end of our walks nowadays, considering there is real life horror unfolding around us with
Absolutely.
every
No,
day another mass shooting. It's mind-boggling, from political assassinations to mass shootings to school shootings to church shootings. I mean, the rate of horrific crime happening nowadays is completely unprecedented in the history of the world, in my opinion. So
and
I
you
think
get
writing Footsteps in the Light is a great idea. Have you
and you,
worked out all these stories? Is this book basically written?
I have. I'm finishing the last story as we speak. Um, and I'm trying to take more of a diverse approach to the message I want to get out there with each of them. I mean, there's a story about a guy that's in prison
Hmm.
based on the premise that Skinner, one of the great psychological guys,
Hmm.
said, and I think it was Skinner, it may have been Freud, but I think it was Skinner, basically said you are a product of your environment.
Hmm.
That when you're born and grow up, the influences you have in your life you will then take those on into the rest of your life. If they were positive, then there's a good chance you may be positive with your life because that's what the kind of feedback and the kind of attention you got. If they were negative, you're going to be well, more prone to becoming negative. Now, you can either agree or disagree to that, but when you think about it, if you're young and you grow up in a household of people that are addicted and are killers, and how can you as a child be anything else necessarily? Because you're inundated with that all the time. So the character in this particular story ends up going to prison.
Hmm.
And when he's in prison, again, when you're in prison, you're just deluged by people that are in prison. So they're not positive, happy people. You know,
Hmm.
they're there for murder or everything else, and all they're doing is planning what they're going to do next when they get out. And of course, he gets out, tries to go straight. And in the story, essentially, you get into a situation where he's moving in that direction, and he's going straight, and he feels good about it. His parole officer, he likes her. She's helping him the whole bit. He got a job. He's feeling good about himself. And then all of a sudden, one of his cronies from prison gets released
Hmm.
and finds him. And the first thing he says, because you know, prisoners, unfortunately, people who've been in prison don't have an easy time finding a job.
Yeah.
Because we as human beings, we kind of look at that and saying, if you were evil once, you're going to be evil again. So
Right.
why would I want to give you a job or bring you into my life? So he has no money. So this guy gets out of prison, goes to him and finds him and says, look, you need money. I've got a way to do it. We're going to rob a bank.
Mm.
And of course, the first guy who's trying to go straight says, I don't want to go back to prison. I didn't break my parole. Oh, don't worry. I've got a maintenance guy, my cousin works at this bank, and he's going to help us get in and get out and the whole bit. And what ends up happening in the story is there is a maintenance guy, but the killer who found the main character, he says, look, nobody's going to get hurt. Don't worry. But that's not the way it works with people that are evil. So the killer, during the process of the bank robbery, ends up killing the cousin, the
Mm.
bank manager. And so it becomes kind of a standoff at the end between him and the other guy. And of course, the other guy sacrifices his life so that he can stop the main killer. So that's kind of the way it goes. And the idea there was, you know, I wanted to tell the story that it's our society doesn't forgive very easily. We're not really in the forgiving business. We assume that if you were bad once, you're always bad. And I
Mm.
think that is a message that, you know, is out there pretty prolifically. So
Yeah, to
that's the book.
counter
There's
that, I
seven
think
of
is important without a doubt. And it is such a horrible thing that a person is convicted of a crime and that crime sticks with them for the rest of their life. Have you
the
ever
rest of their
been
life.
convicted of a crime? Yes. You know, the easiest thing for any HR person to do today is to say, sorry, you know, particularly in this electronic age. You know, I've had people on my show who've pled guilty to crimes thinking it was the easiest way out when they were young.
Yeah,
They weren't
no.
necessarily guilty, and they thought if they moved out of state, it wouldn't follow them, and they're, you know, stuck in menial jobs for the rest of their lives because of that. So,
Well, and I think the other issue too is even if they're found innocent, the fact that they were even brought into court and
mm,
had to prove they're innocent makes them guilty.
yeah,
Because the idea is you may have been found innocent, but we know you killed that girl. And so
mm,
they can spend the rest of their life trying to get some normalcy, but they'll never get it. That's why I wanted to write this story because there's a lot of going that this stuff is going on. And I think, and then I have a story about people that believe in God and people that don't. They're
mm,
brothers. One of them believes in God, the other one doesn't. So they end up in a situation where they're constantly battling back and forth about God, and they start their own groups. One's an atheist, and he hates people that believe in God. He just hates them.
mm,
And the other guy, he's a minister, so he doesn't hate the other side, but he tries to continue to build his own allegiance with people that believe in God. And that's going on right now,
yeah,
topically. I
yeah,
mean, it's just a whole group of people out there that just can't stand religion.
right,
They don't know why they can't stand it, but they just can't stand it. And then there's the side that does. One's a lot more aggressive, and the other side is trying to be a lot more like Jesus and be a
yeah,
little bit more forgiving, but it just doesn't work,
mm,
because you're constantly. So that's kind of what I'm focused on with this book is trying to bring to light some of these issues. I'm writing a really great one right now called The Last Christmas Story
mm,
about a guy who's a mailman, but he's also plays Santa Claus for years, and the journey that he has trying to deal with what these kids are asking for. When kids go to see Santa Claus, they sit in your lap as your Santa Claus,
yeah,
and they want toys and games and gum and stuff. But many of them want their parents to get back together. They
ah,
want their dad to be out of prison. And of course,
mm,
Santa Claus. quote unquote, can't give you those things.
Yeah.
But he tries. So it's kind of I'm writing a little mystery that this guy goes through because he turns out to be the real Santa Claus when it's all
Wow.
said and done. Yeah. So
That sounds great. And that sounds like a film as well. Like I said, you have a very cinematic way of writing, and it's terrific. I always wanted a Frosty the Snow Cone maker from Santa
did you
and
get it?
Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
Okay.
And I never got either. Believe it or not. Years later, I got Rock'em Sock'em Robots when I was about 45. And I never got the snow cone
You
maker.
didn't buy
So
yourself a snow cone maker?
I'm gonna have to do that one of these days. Yeah, Santa hasn't done it. It's about time, darn it.
Yeah,
So
come on.
without a doubt. Well, Carlo Armenise has done wonderful work on his latest book and all of his books, of course. This one is called Evil Eyes, a story of love, hate, and witchcraft. It follows Andrew Weiler, a man who is at the top of his career. He is a top photographer. He's got a good buddy. He's got a wonderful life, except he's lonely. Then, of course, she walks in. And is she going to make everything right or everything wrong? We're going to have to read along to find out. Highly recommended. I love Carlo's books. Can't wait for Footsteps in the Light to come out as well. And that story about Santa Claus has me ready to put it on pre-order for sure. The links are below this interview, folks. Follow Carlo on Amazon and find out about all of his works. His Sam Razor series is just terrific. If you love, Sam Spade or Philip Marlowe or any of those guys, the hard-boiled detective. This one's a hard-boiled detective with a little bit more of a sense of humor, and it's spot on, perfect. Yet the crimes are very real and very, very compelling, and that's what makes it a sensational read. Carlo, thank you so much for joining me here today.
I appreciate your time. I always do. You've got wonderful insights. You really get into the material, which makes me very happy as an author. Because so many times I get approached by people that want to promote my work, and then I'll ask them, "Well, have you read the story?"
Yeah.
No, but I mean, come on. It's like you want to take advantage of the popularity, but that's it. So I appreciate that, and I know you do the same thing with all the authors that you have on your show. And the last thing I would say is that if people want to find out more about the stories and the books, they can go to carloarmenise.com, and they can see all my work there, plus trailers on each of the books as well.
Awesome. Great. I'll have to look for those trailers. I haven't seen them yet. Looking forward to seeing that. I will visit your website. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.